The footage you will see is from a 12-hour marathon that is likely still live right now. My Hunter build will also be linked in the description. Just delete Gambit. That is the height of discourse surrounding Destiny 2's most abandoned game mode. Not even Bungie themselves seem interested in the mode, so why should we, right? But how did this game mode end up as the punching bag of the community? In theory, Gambit is the peak of the Destiny 2 experience. It combines elements of Bungie's famous PvP and industry-leading PvE into an activity that allowed both dedicated fan bases to enjoy their game. But current Gambit player counts continue to comfortably rest along the bottom as the least played game mode, and it's not even close. Why? Why has Gambit languished as the worst that Destiny has to offer when on paper it should be the exact opposite? Is it loot incentive, time investment, a lack of updates, or maybe some other factor? This video aims to establish the history of Gambit, what it does well, what it does poorly, and what Gambit could be if Bungie was willing to be bold and give it one more try. Gambit is the youngest of Destiny's game modes, being introduced in Season of the Drifter on March 5th in 2019. It was released with a mixed reception. A mixed reception that slowly dwindled its popularity to where it is today. Gambit's last major update came with the final shape, the most recent update, adding 2 new enemy types, the Lucent Hive and the Shadow Legion. These enemies have been in the game for, at the earliest, a year before finally being added to this mode. And if our current numbers are anything to go by, they didn't help much. Bungie has stated that they are effectively done trying to update the mode. Even the game director Joe Blackburn stated, "As many of you have noticed, we've been quiet on Gambit since last year's overhaul that launched alongside the Witch Queen. In that revamp, the team made significant changes across 5 categories in Gambit: the core activity fundamentals, primeval tuning, invasions, and animo economy, and rewards. Unfortunately, these updates didn't move the needle for player engagement. Although we know our Gambit fans mostly care about new or returning maps, this is an area of the game with lower engagement that would take resources away for more popular parts of the game to shore up. Gambit is, by Bungie's own admission, dead. Heck, they didn't even go out of their way to animate the drifters lip sync with the new enemies. What went wrong here? Destiny is clearly a powerhouse among MMOs, with many clones or lookalikes trying to compete for its spot and mostly failing. Bungie has created a game that players love, but yet Gambit fell so incredibly flat. Let's start by asking, why do people like Destiny? PvE feels fun to play due to the sheer volume of content, and even if you are running the same activity repeatedly, such as a raid, your focus goes into perfecting your builds and your skills to get faster and better at clearing the activity and helping new players get through it. PvP feels fun to play because the match is different in every single game. Even if the maps are repeated, the players you are fighting never are. The players are the activity. In PvP, visual repetition is high, but personal growth becomes its own reward and its own reason to engage. This is why having a stale meta in PvP is far more detrimental, because it destroys the core variety and replayability and growth with staleness. And now, Gambit, which should be the best of the PvE and the PvP, suffers from the worst of both modes. PvE players will feel Gambit's staleness because the maps are the exact same, with enemy compositions and densities being predictable and DPS phases offering little variety. PvP players will feel Gambit's staleness because their improvement as an individual is massively diluted and hardly ever tested, especially when the meta is so clearly bent towards just simply using a heavy weapon. Your skills against players seem to matter very little. PvE players feel as though invasions carry too much weight, compounded by the bosses being virtually identical to each other. PvP players feel as though they are forced to wait around for their chance to shine. But because anyone from your team can invade, if your time to shine is stolen from you, you feel disrespected. Or still, because invasions come up at a predictable interval, while giving the invader such incredible tools such as wall hacks and a free overshield and regular access to heavy, it's hard to feel as though you're getting better as an individual. Loot incentive doesn't seem to be much of a problem for Gambit either, as whenever you ask a non-Gambit player why they're queuing for the mode, almost invariably they're going to answer to hunt for a god roll of whatever weapon. Indeed, Gambit's core problem is its repetition and its frustration. Not only do most Gambit matches feel practically identical to each other, but when the elements of PvE and PvP interact, they don't complement each other, they insult each other. Gambit feels in its prime when strategy is your weapon, when both teams are neck and neck and each action you take feels critical for the success of the game. A situation like invading right after your team just sent over 3 blockers, slowly draining their moats, taking out an invader at a vulnerable time for your team, clutching up some last-minute DPS to close out the game, that is when Gambit is unbeatable. Gambit provides a venue for PvE, normally a purely cooperative activity, to be done competitively. It offers players the opportunity to say, I am better than you at Destiny 2, in a way that feels more realistic to the skills of a good, focused PvE player. And it's not like players aren't looking for this type of engagement. World's First races absolutely dominate Twitch when it's around. It's why speedrunning remains a feature of gaming culture. It feels good to be the best. And Gambit provides the PvP players a way to cooperatively support their team by doing something competitively aggressive. It feels amazing, coming from personal experience as a non-Gambit player who's been playing nothing but Gambit for the last 16 hours, to invade when the enemy is just about to secure their win and set them back just long enough for your team to race down the Primeval's health bar. This is what Gambit is at its best, but clearly it has not been providing that. If it had provided that, it wouldn't have mattered if it was updated with new maps or new enemies or not. Let's look at PvP, which has barely received updates. No. Gambit was dead on arrival. The reasons to engage with PvP and PvE survive even when no updates come through. They survive effectively despite their developers. Playing these modes feel intrinsically motivating. The loot is a strong motivator, but it's a means to an end to further its intrinsic motivation of playing their favorite game mode better. If Gambit had delivered its own intrinsic motivation, it would have survived. It clearly has not. And I think it will require Bungie to be willing to take bold steps to shake up Gambit for it to start providing to players, likely at the cost of resources, with the rewards being good faith and possibly player retention. Because right now, Gambit isn't working, and its biggest problems can't be fixed without big changes. Strategy needs to be back in the driver's seat for Gambit again, but a good strategy game requires each element to be in tune with each other, and Gambits aren't always. Gambit seemingly has unsolvable problems in 3 main areas: a lack of variety, a dominance of power ammo, and the power of invaders. Gambit had a half-decent way to solve its variety problem back during the release with Gambit Prime. Gambit Prime was effectively the quote-unquote competitive version of Gambit. More boss health, more required motes to bank, and so on. The largest addition, however, and the addition it is most fondly remembered for, was its role system. As you played Gambit, you would unlock armor that would give a benefit for each piece you equipped. The roles were Reaper, Collector, Sentry, and Invader. Reaper focused on creating motes and taking down enemies with perks that rewarded high-value target marking, special ammo on kills, longer-lasting mote timers, and increased ability charge rate after kills. Collector is rather obvious, and its perks granted more motes dropped upon death, overshield for mote pickups, ammo when banking, and a larger mote storage, allowing for bigger blockers to be deployed. Sentry operated as a sort of anti-invader and anti-blocker, with perks for bonus damage against taken, health when near the bank, marking invaders with damage, and increased stats for you and nearby allies. The Invader, of course, focused on invading with perks like reloading while invading, improved overshield while invading, damage bonus on evasion kills, and locking and draining the enemy bank. There was problems with the system, however. It sort of insisted upon itself. In order to be better at Gambit and Gambit Prime, you had to have a full set of these armors. We have other systems like this with things like raids and raid mods, but these aren't placed in a competitive environment. If you wanted to compete at the higher levels of Gambit Prime, you effectively had to have these armors. Bungie tried to lessen this issue by offering boons, which would effectively give you points towards these armor sets as if you were wearing them, but they were limited and felt bad that you were being forced to use them. This system, however, was quite fun and would likely breathe so much needed life back into the mode. Heck, Bungie likely still has the code for each of these perks available, so re-implementing them might not cost all that much to the studio. Feels good to have your spot in the team and then provide that value like no one else could. But the Gambit Prime roles must be more easily accessible. So how do we fix it? Any changes to Gambit must focus on allowing players to have a conversation with each other via strategy. Provide strong pros and even stronger cons to doing any action with ways for each team to interact with those strategies. How does a team with good moat collectors interact with a team that's good at invading? How does a team with strong DPS get ahead of a better ad clear and moat collecting team? How does a team with strong invading skills mitigate the damage of a DPS team? The armor bonuses were a start, but they required you to lock in those roles before the game had even begun, meaning that if your strategy wasn't working, you were kind of stuck with it and asked to simply just do what wasn't working, but just harder. What if instead of armor sets, you could receive these perks during the game, on the fly? The Gambit Bank has 4 sides. What if, depending on where you deposited, you would receive points towards these perks? The bank could have a sort of holographic outline of an icon representing each role above each bank spot. That banking spot would show you how many others were also doing this role, and Bungie could add the role points as a buff to the player's screen. This would allow players to potentially multi-class or hyper-focus this session of Gambit towards their playstyle, sort of like a roguelike. Maybe one session you start out building up an invader bonus, then you realize partway through that it would be more effective to pivot towards a Reaper role. You could do that. You are already encouraged to bank simultaneously with players anyway, so thus having each player lock down their role all together would feel amazing. Suddenly, you aren't just one person in a group of 4. You're a member of a band, a member of a team. Let's add even more strategy to this by requiring only 5 motes to add towards your role's points. Any extra would just be bonus to the overall total in Primeval. This gives the players a choice. Grab 5 and bank quickly to build up your role points, or get the Primeval up faster by grabbing more motes at once, but potentially losing out on your maximum role points. But the problems with power ammo and invading need to be addressed before these roles mean anything. Right now, invading is a no-brain pick. Of course, your team is going to invade. Why wouldn't you? Every team gets one, and there is virtually no penalty for using it. At worst, you end up throwing away 30 seconds of time that could have been used towards banking or dealing with a Primeval. At best, you massively set the other team behind. There is no conversation of strategy here. The invading team isn't asking the defending team, hey, we're going to invade now. Do you have an answer for us? The invader is just a on-the-clock problem of varying difficulty the other team has to deal with. Worse still is that most invaders are entering with a full mag or more of heavy, a large overshield, and free wall hacks assuming they aren't aimed down the sights. This makes their skill check on dealing out damage or taking kills, even as someone who loves to invade, feel very cheesy. We can't address the invader problem without also tackling the heavy problem. What if invading wasn't such a no-brain pick? What if there was a serious cost you had to consider when invading? First off, give the portal a bank and require anyone who wants to invade a required cost of 5 motes. This is very easy to set up, of course, but this now immediately sets the invading team back, even if slightly. This also may prevent Timmy Two Thumbs from consistently invading, ironically, because that score screen will show even more zeros and an even lower placement if he does nothing but throw motes into an invasion hole and doesn't do anything other than get himself killed. Next, remove all of the buffs from the invader, the wall hacks and overshields primarily, and let them invade for as long as they would like. They are now in a more realistic 4v1. If they're a good player, they can slow that team down and cause a massive disruption, but it will require a seriously skilled player to do so. But let those skilled players flex. What about heavy? They won't likely have it because next, make heavy only obtainable from killing an invader. In other words, remove the boxes and make invaders a heavy ammo pinata. Suddenly, being invaded isn't a burden to the PvE team, it's a challenge. If they can bring down that invader, suddenly their DPS skyrockets, or they can send an invader of their own with stronger weapons to boot. So how does the invader stop that heavy drop from happening, being that they're stuck there until they go down? The invaders can now escape through the enemy team's own invasion portal whenever they'd like. Suddenly, invading now has consequences and counters. Having a designated sentry player is an active benefit against an invasion-focusing team. Oh, and one last important note, now that the portals require motes, keep spawning high-value targets that drop motes, even when the primeval's up. This allows the invader to still go out and invade, they just have to go out of their way for it. The general spawns for invading and such also need to be updated as they are far too predictable right now. I hope I don't need to provide specifics, play Gambits, you'll understand what I mean. A sentry player can now be a source of heavy ammo, and they now have a clear goal. Stop the invader as quickly as they can and don't let them escape. This forces conflict, which, again, as an egotistical PvP player like me, I would love. But even if the enemy team lacks a good counter invader or sentry, there is only so much a single unbuffed player can have before they crumble. Supers are still a thing after all. If this still doesn't feel like enough, have the invading player drop more motes on death the longer they are in the enemy team's base. Maybe 5 motes for every 30 seconds. This encourages the invader to get in, cause damage, and get out before the defending team ends up profiting even more from him being there than if he would have just simply stayed out of invading altogether. This also has the added benefit of discouraging the purely long-range weapons that currently dominate the PvP meta of Gambit. You will need to get closer to enemies to escape. Lastly, reduce the amount of healing to the primeval any invader kill provides, being that they won't have a limit on how much damage they could potentially cause. Of course, with more motes in this economy, we will likely need to increase the summon requirement. Let's say from 100 to 125 or 150. This gives the collecting rolls more opportunity to shine and more time for each roll to solidify themselves. But we will talk more about the rolls later. Because we've reduced the maximum primeval health gain the invader has, we need to balance it against the DPS teams. Increase the boss's health and remove the bonus damage from eliminating envoys. This health gating mixed with the escalating damage is confusing to an inexperienced player, as it operates entirely differently than any other DPS cycle in the game, as you are actively discouraged from doing too much damage early on, which seems absurd to me. And lastly, for the boss, add small mechanics to each primeval depending on what enemy type you fought. You're fighting Vex this time, require teams to stand on a Vex plate to deal damage to the primeval. Hive, what if a sword really was the best option and gave you bonus damage for getting closer to the primeval? Scorn, you get the idea. Give players a reason to switch up their loadouts depending on the boss. And lastly, add the onslaught maps to the Gambit pools. They are practically perfect and would add a much needed diversity to the layouts. What about those role perks? These roles need to supply a power fantasy that makes players feel incredible for leaning into them. While the Gambit Prime sets did a good job initially, the sandbox has changed and there are a few changes that need to occur to these. Reapers. Their identity is now the team buff creators. Creating and banking motes has more uses from the invasion portals now requiring them. Reapers still need some sort of value in the late game, however, so these changes will hopefully fix that. High value tracker. Combatants you damage take extra damage from other non-Reaper allies. This is a simple way to clear ads faster and rewards a subtle increase in primeval DPS. Pinata of Death. These are all real names, by the way. Small change. Banking motes at the invader portal grants allies special ammo. Being that heavy ammo boxes are removed, this gives the team a source of special ammo even during primeval phases because of the now respawning high value targets. Long lasting flavor. Again, these are real perk names. Mostly unchanged, motes last longer, but I also think adding a small bonus to ability energy whenever an ally picks up one of your motes would feel great. Lastly, major rewards, another subtle update. Damaging powerful combatants grants allies bonus super energy. This gives them even more value in the DPS part of the primeval phase. Collectors, their identity is all about sending blockers and keeping motes off the floor. However, banking motes only last so long, so let's fix this like the Reaper. Inheritance, a small update here. Preserve a small portion of your carried motes on death. We don't need the invader getting more benefit from you taking this role. Umbral armor, another small update. Rapidly picking up motes or standing near the primeval grants an overshield. This gives them some tools to play a more close-range DPS role and also have some defense against invaders trying to escape out their portal. Cashback. This perk is almost completely out of date, so let's change it. Gain a small amount of heavy ammo whenever you bank. Just a simple way to get a little bit of ammo. High yield savings. Update for more variety and strategies. Carry up to 20 motes. Deposit them in the invasion portal to send a champion blocker. I know, I hate champions too, but sacrificing primeval progress to send a capital P problem to the enemy team will feel amazing for that collector. Bonus points if the invasion portal has 2 slots and you get to choose between what 2 types of champions you want to send. Sentry, obviously the defender of the team with now a more active role due to the invasion portal's uptime and invaders elimination rewards. Umbral Strike, complete change to this perk to keep up with the increased PvP encounters. Banking motes on the invader portal increases your damage against blockers and invaders. This gives more uses for the motes that will spawn during the primeval phases from the high value targets and allows the sentry a way to stack the deck against the invader at the cost of primeval progress. Safe and sound, an update. Reduce damage from long range sources, a simple way for them to better play the lookout role. Invader Tracker, this is unchanged. Damaging an invader marks them for your team. If you want to shut down an invader, this is a great way of doing so. Light of the Defender, a small update. You and nearby allies gain an overshield when an invader is present. Another way to counteract if the enemy team just loves invading. Invader, the obvious sort of offensive role, but this can now feel more pertinent with the primeval requiring more from your team and your risk and reward for doing your job being greater. Assassin's Munition, an update. Kills while invading grant your team a small amount of special ammo upon your return. Being that the impact of the invasion is lessened but open to specialization, this can be a way for even an inexperienced player to net a small amount of value to their team. Lethal Defense, another update. This removes the invader's aura, making them harder to locate if they enter while carrying motes. Killmonger, a small update. Increase damage against the primeval or majors if you safely return while carrying motes per mote held. This further encourages escaping successfully instead of just going down in a blaze of glory, as well as makes up for your time away from your team. And lastly, Bank Robber. Instead of invading, locking the enemy bank, which would make invading into a game of hide and seek due to the increased time, this instead creates a large dome of darkness at the bank's location. This operates like a curtain, blocking vision for those who are not on the same side, making targeting you or getting to the bank and primeval difficult and risky, as there might be an enemy player nearby. This also opens up more close-range weapons again to hopefully shake up the meta. What do you think about all this? Too much? Not enough? I want to start a more serious conversation about Gambit if it can be fixed. Subscribe if you think Gambit should be given another shot. Bless your faces and deuces.